Éarte? Yes, we are, because that is the name of our show. Welcome. I am Sam DeLev, and this is our Children of Éarte after show, where I am joined by architect of this adventure herself, Deborah Ann Woll. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here.
Such a delight to interface with your brain. So please introduce yourself to the people so that they can likewise.
Yes. Hello. My name is Deborah Ann Woll. I am the architect. I love this word. My father is an architect. That feels very appropriate of this strange Children of Éarte adventure that we are on. And I'm so excited to be here. I love talking about behind the scenes and what it takes to make this show, because I spend every Tuesday basically killing myself to make sure I've got something exciting. So I can't wait to share a little bit of that process with everyone.
Remember, you can always donate diamonds for any Revivify ritual if the Dungeon Master so requires. And funding such resurrections are our sponsors. Yeah. Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. We're giving away 2 codes. You can type !code in chat for free Electrum chest in game. We got Die Hard Dice, purveyors of your clicky clacky math rocks. So use code Éarte at checkout for 10% discount, and we'll be doing a giveaway in chat during stream, as well as Sirenscape, because epic games require epic music, and spoopy Halloween specials require the same. So, if you have any questions for our architect of Éarte herself, please ask your question with question in all caps in chat. Here, I'll demonstrate. Okay, well, not with like the all caps, but I'm going to start off with the questions and the Halloween specials, because last week, we had such a delightfully quippy dreamscape. There are so many different things you can do that fit the prompt.
Yes.
Halloween special.
Yes.
And you opted for what I can only describe as Mansion Murder Mystery meets Monster Mayhem?
A little bit, yeah. I just love old monster movies. And I, for the longest time, have had the idea of wanting to turn those monsters into playable monster characters in a way. And this just seemed like a perfect opportunity to do it, because I knew I'd have the right players to jump on board with that idea. And it just seemed fun to like meet them and fight them and maybe befriend them and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I was really excited about making that adventure. I was short on time, so I banged the whole thing out in like the day of building. I mean, I have so many monsters they didn't even meet. But I'm really hoping we'll do it again, or I can use the concept again, because this ended up being kind of a really good play test, actually. I was a little personally disappointed that I didn't get the balance super great. But again, like that happens, right? Especially when you're doing things in the last minute. Sometimes things don't work out in the balance. I still think the sort of concept of meeting these monsters is really fun. And so you can sort of lean into that experience of it. But I learned a lot of valuable things. And I think we may see this adventure again with some adjustments.
Ooh, so with respect to Maverick Q's question, yes, of whether we'll have a Halloween special every year, I'm starting to maybe get the impression that we could say
hi, Maverick too. We have gaming experience together, so very good to hear from you. So yes, I would absolutely love to do that. I would love to do a recurring Halloween-y special thing. There are so many monsters from especially that like universal, time period, as well as we could go into a lot of the, giant bug movies, which are so fun. So there's a lot of mid-century horror that we can draw from in terms of inspiration. So I'm hoping we can continue to do that.
All right. So we have bug movies. You have to know, I am a cultural void. I used to call myself a black hole, but those have substance. So like, what kind of monster movies drew your inspirations?
There's a giant praying mantis movie, Attack of the Praying Mantis, which is incredible. The classic Them, which are giant ants. Anyone who loves those old movies will know the woo 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 the noise that the ants make when they're getting close. So good. And they're in the sewers under Los Angeles. It's such a fun movie.
Wait, I
But
thought that
so
was a documentary.
I mean, maybe. But yeah, I mean, there was a whole period kind of in the mid-century when, nuclear war and all those things were very, this idea of like the experimentation with that was making bugs get really big. And then of course they would wreak havoc on civilization. So, the praying mantis, flies over the city and the queen ant and all this. It's all very cool. Giant spider invasion.
So an arthropod aficionado is our architect of Éarte.
I guess so. I don't know. But yeah, so between those and then the monsters from before, I don't know, there's just a lot of really cool classic tropes that you can pull on and make your own. So none of these monsters are meant to be exactly those creatures, but it's supposed to give you the fun of that. I think I tend to lean into that a lot with D&D. It's a lot of like my favorite adventure stories that I grew up with, that I love. And as an actor, I'm always like, ooh, what would it have been like to be in that movie or encounter that creature or that monster? And yeah, D&D like gives me the opportunity to do that. Like, what if I was Indiana Jones, is always a really fun experiment. So I get inspired a lot by that kind of stuff.
So you mentioned a bunch of things that our players didn't quite get to, in part because the role play was very entertaining and fun, and we just love to watch them. And I know we're saying there's going to be maybe some recurring stuff, and I know DMs reduce, reuse, recycle, but this is a holiday special. Any chance we can get a little taste of some of the what might have beens in the back pocket?
So sure. We just met a creature that lived within a black lagoon, which I was very excited. We'll have more going on with that. We perhaps may meet a mad doctor that is assembling corpse parts at some point. I don't know. Maybe that's in there. Things like that. And maybe even perhaps a castle dwelling Fanger of some kind. We'll see.
Oh, all extremely legally distinct monsters. I love it. But seriously, off the drop, we got the most delightful, just quippy back and forth. Every single player understood the assignment so marvelously. What prompt did you give them that they were able to deliver that?
So I said the only thing I told them is we're going, early to mid-century horror. So go ahead and lean in. And as always, my thing is, vintage style, not vintage values. So this is very much like lean into the aesthetic of this and whatever that kind of trope and world means to you, that is exciting and inspiring for you. And so, yeah, I mean, they just ran with it. I said, you are your characters from Children of Éarte, but you can lean into some of these characters. And I even, I said, like, I always see Maeve as kind of a Lauren Bacall kind of, feel to her. And so, if there were favorite actors or, again, tropes from that time period that they wanted to lean into, they could. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of great. I mean, they immediately got it and ran with it. And I tried to really throughout the adventure give hints that this was like kind of a black and white sepia toned world, and some of the camera tricks, it's as if they were dreaming on a universal backlot kind of thing, and that even in that big lagoon space they could see that there were the edges of the soundstage, so I like that idea that they would actually feel like they were in a movie. I just wanted to kind of bring that with us, that sense a little bit.
I love that. Did any of the players' choices surprise you or particularly stand out to that end? Because I'll admit that was a very different Carolyn Stern.
Yes, it was. Oh, she totally got me. But again, I'm so glad, right? Like a dream is a perfect space to experiment a little bit with your character and what you're capable of, and perhaps sides of their own characters that they're a little bit afraid of or wouldn't want to show because of insecurities and things like that. So I was happy to see them lean into that as well. And And then of course I always forget. I don't know why I forget this. I always forget that Robin has the invisibility. So the fact that she immediately casts that on the Invisible Man, I was like, he's naked. That's how that works, right? Like he has to take his clothes off. Like that's how you see him. So he's just a naked dude walking around. I don't know. I don't know. That immediately, that was the moment that for me was like, this has set the tone for this this episode and the
so this is what tonight is.
the like the forgive me kind of unveiling or the looking behind the scenes of these kinds of movies and and that is we don't think about it because he's invisible, but that's what he is. He's walking around naked in order to be invisible. And
it's so cold.
It would be so cold, right? You'd be so cold.
I mean, where was
and
the
very
first
vulnerable.
Set? That can't have been a warm place.
Yeah.
That was not in Florida.
No, absolutely. So you're walking around outside in bare feet. Like it's a rough way to be. I think, again, all these things come with, it'd be very cool to be the Invisible Man, but it'd also be very, very difficult. And so, so that, I don't know, that was just fun. It set the tone. I knew as soon as that happened, I was like, we're gonna unmask a lot of these, tropes down the line here and pull out these little hints.
They sure were unmasked.
They were unmasked in many ways. I was so hoping, I wanted that werewolf fight to get Fairuza so badly, because again, I warned them ahead of time. I was like, this is a dream, don't be afraid to die, like you'll be fine, like the children of Éarte will continue, you can die in this dream, because she would have been a werewolf, she would have been on my side, right? So I wanted her to fail those Constitution saving throws so badly. They were high too, and she beat all of them. So I was like,
you shouldn't have bit the buff one.
I should have what?
You shouldn't have bit the buff one. The Constitution is too high.
She was the one who was right there, right? And he's like a wild, rabid creature. He's not like using logic. Oh, I should go after the, the lesser Constitution. Like he's just going after the blood, right?
And the scores aren't floating over their head for the werewolf to see. Shocking.
And I thought his thing was high enough that I'd get her, and then she'd be on my side, and then it would be so much harder for the other bad guys to lose because I'd have a team. So yeah, the general concept of this, and potentially it will continue, and I hope everyone forgets this by next year, is that slowly I win them over to my side, and we're all bad guys, and I win for once. So
I mean, one, I would watch. Two, chat, you heard it here first. I was just going to slowly peel them away.
I'm just going to peel them away so they can be bad guys on my team. But yeah, I thought that would be really fun. And I think also for them too, like for Fairuza to play a half Fairuza, half werewolf, like bad guy, also for Alicia to be able to do that, I think it would be really a fun challenge.
Think of all the lightning static in your fur, though. Like that's got.
Oh no, I think she looks awesome. She looks so good. She looks like one of those Tesla balls.
Family craft generator.
Yeah.
Sort of vibe.
So cool.
Yeah. We have a fun question coming in from Callie Robin. Whether the film The Incredible Shrinking Man lends itself to a good episode. Any inspiration?
Absolutely. Attack the 50-Foot Woman. This is a great, we have to do all of the giants and the shrinking. That's all really good.
We have the whole enlarged reduce mechanics in Dungeons and Dragons. So what monster movies do we pair with the monster manual mechanics?
Yeah, I will take suggestions. If people want to leave them there, we'll compile them and I'll just keep making monsters. Because it's the idea of having like a monster manual but of sort of tropes and monsters that we're familiar with from those old movies that I love, but just be really fun to be able to draw from those, whenever you wanted something cool that reminded you of that. We've talked about this before, I think, on here, that I think there's some value sometimes to pulling things that seem familiar because your players will instantly recognize that and know exactly where they are, what the tone is. But then you change just enough to make it unique and yours, and surprise them with a few things. And that's kind of I think the perfect balance. So yeah, that's always a tip I offer sometimes, is use trope and familiarity to your advantage.
Maverick also points out that Fairuza would make a fantastic 50-foot woman.
She's quarter of the way there already. My goodness, fifth of the way there already. Yeah, 50-foot woman. Oh, I could totally. Oh yeah, maybe she is the 50-foot woman. I'll target her when they get to that room.
Now we just need to know it's not a con save next time.
It's not a con save. Well, we'll see. It depends. That could probably be like a charisma save or something like that. I read that once, that like charisma saves are more about like your identity, like who am I? Like you make charisma saves against like teleportation, like forced teleportation. So it's about like
Bane does it.
So it's about
I think.
you knowing who you are in this moment, physically present. And it's always so interesting because you do wisdom saves for pretty much everything else. So I wonder if that, like changing your body construct, or that your cells like that, if that would be a charisma save. Maybe I'll have to do some research.
Well, I mean, look, I love putting some respect on the rare saves, the int
Right?
save, the charisma save, even a strength save now and again.
Yeah.
D&D structures all these classes, so you have each one gets a common save and a rare save. We're not targeting the players. We're just giving them an opportunity to use all of their saving throw proficiencies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. But it was a dream as communicated to the players.
Yes.
And from a Doyleist perspective. But in the world of Éarte, they did all share that dream from like a Watsonian perspective. Do you have any idea as to why they might have shared that particular dream in world? Like, is Ivy's sort of 20s vibe giving them a vintage air? Why do you think they would have all had that dream?
Yes, there are reasons. Yes, some of the style is inspired by the fact that that's kind of the era that they would recognize her from, and it's in there. It's also because I like that era aesthetically, is also why Ivy kind of aesthetically appears in that era. But also there is an overarching presence. We had a dream adventure for SDCC. If you want to go and find that one shot that we did, this is a one shot dream adventure as well. I have a thing that I am working on that is involving this kind of magic and that kind of manipulation of one's mind. And so some of this is me kind of playing in that arena a little bit and trying to sort of see how people respond. And, especially even something with the Halloween special, this idea that I sort of sparsely describe the room. And then when they ask about, is there a book? And I'm like, suddenly, oh my goodness, there's a book on the wall. So there's a little bit of a sense that you can help create the world while you're there, as long as you have an idea that is exciting and interesting. So I like that, and allowing players to have a little bit of an input, a collaboration on what's available to them. So rather than being just stuck, because I've had players be like, well, is there a tree next to me that I can climb? Is it within 5 feet? And I'm like, do you want there to be? Sure. Like at a certain point, it's fun when it comes from the player, where they say, I have this idea of this thing I want to do. And if it doesn't completely unbalance or take away from what I'm creating, great. Oh yeah, sure. It's a bookshelf. Why not? Great. Now I can use it for something for me that you don't know about,
Oh no, what's behind the bookshelf?
Right. What's behind the bookshelf? What else is on it? Like, can I, so it's now I can hide something there but you thought you made it. So you thought you knew everything about it. So it's a fun way to kind of collaboratively add to the space together, where I don't have to feel quite as, like I'm hiding things from them because they helped make that, and if they're interested, they can learn more about it. I don't know.
Right.
It's
We
an interesting
imagine
idea.
the bed and then we lie in it as we are pelted
Yeah.
by books. I don't know. But thank you everyone for joining us for Children of Éarte. I'm going to go check all of my notes about the dream episodes now. So thank you for adding to my red string cork board.
You're welcome. Again, don't hold me too firmly. I have a whole book of notes, but definitely as I go forward, I'm like, when I get a really good idea, I'm like, oh, let me go through and see if that contradicts anything. But it's a lot to look through. So hopefully I'm doing okay so far.
The cork board approves, I assure you.
Okay,
but I don't want to linger exclusively on the
Yes.
most recent episode, even though it was extremely delightful and I loved everything about it. But it's been a while since we last spoke. We
Yes.
mentioned before the show that the last time you were on the Éarte, the team hadn't yet pieced the mirror back together, which
we were
is
still
a
in the
major
veil.
So how does it feel to get the party to that point? And is this how you planned for them to get here?
Again, you know, I mean, a long running campaign like this that is homebrewed, for lack of a better word, really. I had vague ideas about where I thought this was going, but again, you let the players guide so much. So no, I didn't like specifically imagine it happening in this environment or how it went down, you know, but by the time they had it and what they had found and some of the things I had sort of spontaneously added, there's a lot of me just going like having an idea live on the stream and going, well, that's cool. I've got to throw that in. And then just hope I can justify it later or whatever it is. Because this is a game of improvisation and collaboration, and I want to be inspired by the players as much as they're inspired by me. So it is, in that ultimately I wanted them to go find all the pieces and put it all together and release both of these rulers and have a battle. And I think like that was a really good example because that battle with Talron was also easier for them than I think they thought it was going to be. I'm less concerned about that. That I had foreseen to some extent. One, it has to do with them being prepared. Two, it has to do like being able to make a plan, you know, be prepared and control the circumstances. Two, every other time they encountered him, they were itty bitty little squishy guys. So like now they're much more powerful. And it really was all of them against the one. And I like the idea that they thought he was a big bad. And suddenly
I'm getting this menacing, there's always a bigger bad vibe from you right now.
It's just really fun when your players are like, oh no, was that a little too easy? You know, like now they start to wonder who's really the problem. If who they thought was going to be like the ultimate baddie, it was actually someone they dispatched of not too shabbily. So yeah, that was kind of fun for me to slowly watch. Like it was going well and they still had dread, you know? Which is sort of great. I'm like, you're beating him. And they're like, but why? It's like great.
Difficult combat, dread. Easy combat, dread.
Still
we
dread.
are pleased that we have instilled dread.
We just want some dread. That's all. So I was very pleased that I had some dread going on. And then we had, you know, and then I was shocked. We got to Tyver and I had a whole thing planned and they just jumped right through. They were like, forget the globes, forget the, you know, forget the balls on the spiral going down, forget the mist. They just started to dive. So I was like, whoa, okay, flip, you know, we're moving forward.
We're moving forward. We're not short resting.
Nothing. They just went and I had to move ahead with something that almost killed them all. So that is what's really interesting to me is they had a pretty easy time with Talron and then they were maybe kind of riding high off of that, thinking that they were so tough and jumped right into something that was a little outside. And that was amazing. We had kind of almost 2 full episodes of combat. And I'm always sort of curious. So, people have different feelings about that, especially on a show that you're watching, about how do you need more variety? Should combat be shorter? And all this is like, I don't know if I know the answer to that necessarily. But again, it was an interesting experiment to let this be a long, hard combat and people having to constantly save each other and is there drama inherent in that and then inherent in the exhaustion when you're finally out of it? And yeah, I don't know. I again, as an experiment, I'm sort of curious how that felt to the players, how that felt to the audience, how it felt for myself, and learning that lesson of how that plays into a story.
I'm also starting to realize that some of the oh god, these characters might die combats have been in aquatically themed scenarios, because I think the other really deadly one was underwater.
I let them breathe this time. I thought that was very nice of me.
So gracious of you.
Wasn't it? I let them breathe.
Well, except then the
I mean,
creature who they were combating didn't let them breathe.
That's right. That's true. I did take that away slightly. Yeah, I felt like that was very nice. I mean, I think water is again, we've had this conversation before where, there are, of course, so many fantastically terrifying monsters. We're talking about, monsters from our, our own cultural, literal, literary history.
In Black Lagoons.
Yes,
all
of that.
Yeah, in water.
But a lot of times the most terrifying things are things that could just kill a normal person, right? It's like, for me, I really enjoy introducing what feels like not everyday fears, but just human common fears, right? The avalanche and being underwater and those kinds of things that are not supernatural. They're very natural. But my God, an avalanche is one of the most terrifying and deadly things that can happen. And to me, that's like, well, let's explore that a little bit. And what would you do if you were in that situation? So much of that's, an actor, the Stanislavski thing is that magic. If I were this person or if I were in this situation, what would I do? And D&D really scratches that itch for me. And I like to pose that to players, if you were, in an avalanche or underwater and there was a giant creature coming by or you were running out of air, what would you do? Think fast, you got 6 seconds.
Yeah. The snow is falling, but you had your players on actual literal rails.
Yes.
And you pushed them off the rails.
I pushed them off
Protective avalanche. So are the surprises from the players those smaller beat to beat, I didn't expect them to dive? Do you feel like you had big picture structural control, or do you think all of those little moments of player decisions, I'm really trying to find a word that isn't snowballed?
Sure. Why not? That's appropriate. I mean, I had the large structure of, I knew this area that, in general, the map of where they were. I knew generally the environments in which I wanted them to play to find each of these mirror shards. Similar to these worlds, I'm going to have a basic map. I'm going to have a basic idea of what the location and environment is and the types of encounters that might happen there. And I have an overarching, I suppose, villain type. Why is this exist? Why are they here? What is all of this that I'm trying to pray out pretty slowly. So
it's not tolerant.
Yeah, it's not tolerant. So there's that overarching structure. But there are things like, and I say this a lot, and even with published adventures, right? If your players are supposed to find a hint for a puzzle down the right corridor and they go left, like, I don't know, put the hint of the puzzle at the left corridor. Like at a certain point,
it's over there now.
Yeah, it's over there now. You have that kind of freedom. And if a player solves a puzzle or defeats a monster in a more interesting way or a more unique way, or in a way that they're proud of, choose that one, right? Like, again, anything that you sacrifice for player cool, you can bring back again, right? Like, that's free work now. And so a lot of times I might just really like something that a player does, or I might need them to find something or whatever it is, and you just adjust, and you take a room that was over here and you move it over here because why not? Or things are going too easy and I planned for 2 monsters, but now there's 5 because
More of them just rose out of
you know, and again, because the ultimate goal of these games are to have a really good time, to tell a really great story, and have your players feel like they are both heroic and in danger. Because they feel more heroic the more danger they're in a way.
Exactly. That's the only reason we're instilling dread,
Yes.
gentle audience. It's not because we take a schadenfreude sort of glee from it.
I do.
Okay, I tried, Jat. You saw.
Don't lie.
Maybe a little glee.
Don't lie to the children.
Fair enough, but let's be on our players' side for a moment. You talked about letting the cool player answer become the answer, and we have like some really creative players here. Are there any fun solves that come to mind that have particularly delighted you that you're like, pardon me, I'm going to crumple my previous answer because I like what I'm seeing?
Let me see if I can think of one specifically. I mean, even most recently with the ice skating, hit the things. So that was supposed to be, I think most of us who play computer games kind of know that puzzle where like you're sliding and you have to hit the right stalagmites in order to get out the thing. And that would have been fine. And it was essentially the idea being like, kind of like hit them in the right order and fast enough to open the door and get out. But I really liked Jen's idea of like, let's use all of us and get out there and kind of activate them all at once. And then we can all get out together. Because there was an element of, playing together on that and a collaboration and a working together that was different than just each player individually kind of going through and making the thing work. So that was a better solution to my puzzle than I had come up with. And she thought about
Max, which is so much better.
Yeah.
Like solutions that include summoned wolf, superior solutions.
Always a superior. And, anytime you see, like, I saw her like sketch it out and she went, oh. And as soon as you see a player do that, it's just your cue is I think, and people may disagree with me, but I think as a good dungeon master to go, yes, yes, and it's still going to be hard. I'm still going to make you do checks for it. And you're still going to have to explain it and figure out exactly how it's going to work. But ultimately, her answer was better than my answer. And her solution was better than my solution. It was more engaging and exciting for her, which is who I'm making this adventure for. So ultimately that I think is the right call. Yeah.
Talked before about how sometimes you will put problems in front of the players without any particular solution in mind. And so in that vein, a generated solution fits the criteria. There's a solve available, an answer exists, and they may or may not use it. They may opt to summon a good boy.
Summon a good boy. Well, also an interesting thing about that. So this is coming off of the episode where we didn't have Adam. And we knew that a little bit late. So I was like, okay, I should come up with some kind of something to bridge. So I actually came up with that puzzle to use for the previous episode. And it was supposed to be for like just 2 of them because they were doing a watch. So it's going to be 2 people, which is much more suited to that like do the timing thing and slide out. And then when they didn't get to it and we had the Globy conversation instead, which was spectacular. Again, talk about like your players running with something and you just being like, yes, and please go, continue. Once Adam came back and I was like, okay, this is now 6 people and he flies. I was like, this needs to be a different puzzle. So again, you're adjusting. So I think flexibility as a dungeon master and as an architect of story, especially one like this, is just, you just have to be willing to go with that. Because yeah, it changes things once you start to go, oh right, Robin can see invisible things and Silas can fly, and oh right, Neb can talk to animals. Like,
yeah, Fairuza can be arbitrary, super tall. Any puzzles involving high shelves, useless, Deb. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Yeah. There's I can't hide anything high up.
But let's not skate over, unlike Fairuza, the Globies. Because while Tyra's ostensibly inhabited by Ivy subjects, they are much more importantly, although perhaps identically, we don't know, future problem, inhabited by our beautiful musical mimicking glowy babies. So what inspired them?
Okay, so what inspired them? Well, the cell, for one. So they're cells.
I love that answer.
Essentially.
I love it.
And I liked the idea of like, how would something, we're also kind of at the bottom of the ocean. And I think about those, like, again, kind of jellyfish or sort of clear bioluminescent creatures that live there, and how really alien the depths of Earth are, right? And so I thought about that, and I was like, well, how would they communicate? Well, they could possibly control some glowing, and then they could vibrate, and their membrane could feel vibrations. So I was like, oh, maybe they would communicate with like vibrations, and so that these are not like overly intelligent, like logical kind of thinkers again. So that's why I was like, this isn't a language. I don't think comprehend languages or speak with small beasts works in that way, or well, more that speak with small beasts works more. That this isn't a language as much as it is just a form of communication in some
exchange of vibes.
Yeah, exchange of vibes. Exactly.
Oh, right, because
precisely, as exchange of frequencies.
Yeah.
So it came to that, and that just kind of put me on again, like my general like middle school science class, inspiration that sort of kept coming back, and all those really fun experiments that you do when you're at that age, and school is still making stuff really fun. So yeah, it kind of came off of that, and I just ran with it, and I was like, what would like 11-year-old Deb have been really excited about learning about this week, and how can I translate that a little bit into this? And I wrote this like very simple, again, not language, but for them, so that I could have a little consistency and let them figure that out. And I don't know, I really enjoyed the Globies. That was a really fun episode, I think, because there was no pressure to advance in that way, and I came up with it pretty quickly, and it was just like, all right, Deb, just like talk about stuff that you enjoy for 2 hours in the form of story and character. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff that came up in that episode that I hadn't specifically set out as like, this is like, even the ground being that that material where if you stab at it really hard, it's hard, but if you just gently, like that stuff, that wasn't like in my mind before we started, but when we started to talk about what it was like, oh, you know what it's like,
it's like rock salt, or maybe bones. Thank you, Robin.
Bones. Yeah, so you like, it's just, it's fun to like let those inspirations happen and then just drop them out there, so yeah, I just let like 10, 11-year-old Deb have a field day that episode.
Okay, you know what? It's tempted me into it, so I'm going to pounce on that motif, because it was a bunch of science-themed moments and references to the Science Museum and just various things that made middle school science Deborah very happy, which in turn makes middle school science Sam very happy. So I gotta ask, are there like any particular school science experiments or lessons that really stick with you, that like, when these things resonate, there are any core memories for science, Deb?
Trying to think, because we had the New Jersey Science Center, that was like the science center I went to as a kid, and then of course there was the planetarium in New York. So I have planetarium stuff planned. There's a little teaser for you. There's planetarium stuff in our future for sure.
You heard it here first on the Éarte exclusive.
Exclusive. You won't know when it's happening, but it's been brewing for a long time, and I'll at some, we'll get there. So I'm trying to think about the Science Center, if there's anything like that, like specifically I remember there. I do always remember like the tornado tubes. Those are really cool.
Yep.
And using different objects and things to disrupt that flow and change it. And they had things where like you could introduce heat and see how that changed flow of air, or cold, or other gusts of air, or objects, and like see how like something light like a feather would be affected versus something heavy like a piece of lead, and it was just very cool. Yeah, really, really interesting.
Good science museum.
Good science museum. And then, of course, there's always those amazing experiments where like they take two household items or household liquids and pour them together. And then like suddenly it like glows and turns color and like foams up. I don't know if I can remember specifically what those elements were or anything like that, but
it's don't mix household elements.
Just don't mix household elements. Anything under your sink, just stay isolated.
Yeah.
Unless you are a middle school science teacher, in which case,
exactly,
go for it.
Make things go boom. Absolutely.
But yeah, it was always so magical, and again, that falls right into it, that really the theme of this whole adventure is that the world is magical, right? We don't need monsters and like the magic of a supernatural world necessarily to know that we are magic. We live, we love, we feel. This is magic, and I like the idea that these characters, that children of Éarte, are considered magic in this world, and that it is magical to be human, to be a child of Éarte to them, and I don't know. I hope that we all. I struggle to embrace that, so I think this is partially me. Writing this and ruminating on this theme to help myself also embrace that a little bit. That creativity is magic and compassion is magic. The connections that we form with people that are important in our lives, that's magic. The way that even when they're gone, we keep them alive in our hearts is magic. So I don't know. These are all deeper, bigger thoughts that don't necessarily have to play on the everyday game level, but those are the big things that I'm excited about and, kind of continue to think about as I create this theming going forward.
Chat, comments. Tell Deborah how magical she is.
You are all magic. Every single one.
You are all magic, but apparently Deborah needs to know. So,
we have to be all reminded someday.
Tell Deborah.
Well, even like, I think, Adam and Josh and, we're coming up with quotes and things like that to pull from the fairy book world. And, the Hans Christian Andersen of, you are, life itself is a wonderful fairy tale, is the most wonderful fairy tale, is right in line with that. And I love this new one, being you are what you believe yourself to be, right? That's magic. We can be brave, we can be smart, we can be all of these things if we just believe enough that we are. And that's also because there are innumerous ways to define what that is, and so we can make that what we wish it to be. So yeah, and D&D has always been such a wonderful way to do that. It's a way to practice being all of those things that we have trouble believing in ourselves, we can practice being brave in impossible situations.
And practice avalanche procedure, I suppose.
That as well.
Rehearse
and proper scuba procedure.
Proper safety stops.
Yes.
I will always eternally be obsessed with the commitment to accuracy and
safety stops.
Not getting the bend. So thank you.
And proper handling in mines and climbing.
Yeah.
Very important. Yes. Training.
I've learned so many things about cyanide. I should talk to you about cyanide after the stream.
Oh no. my brief Wikipedia research. Ah,
Hey, it's a great opportunity to take middle school science Deb out
mhm.
and about and explore some curiosity. But
Exactly.
always ideally with the goal of instilling a little bit of dread, which is why Maverick asks whether
Yes.
we can expect some more horror as part of our genre soup. What do you think we got coming up?
Our soup of genre. Um,
It's pretty super.
I mean, yeah, I always like a little horror and dread. I think I am a classic high adventure kind of DM. That stuff is always going to be very exciting to me. Um, again, I will always skew adventure horror probably more than fantasy in some realms, just because that's my personal preference and what excites me. So again, less dragons and you know, uh, 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 I don't know, what do they call it? Like epic battles between, rivals kind of things. And more like I really like keeping players kind of alone and having that sense of like they have to kind of figure stuff out. Um, so yeah, I absolutely eerie for sure, a little goofy almost always, sciency and like learning stuff at the same time. Nancy Drew investigatory, um, horror, absolutely. And then yeah, like high adventure, um, problem solving kind of stuff. Yeah.
I suppose the eerie and the suspense are a little more personal and small scale than the big battles. It is a little
Maybe,
more character, personal twist and
maybe.
stuff.
And look, as I'll say this right here, I'm nervous about where this goes from here because I don't have very much experience running games for high level characters, which might have
Mm.
been part of my problem with the Halloween special. Um,
Mm.
so I'm gonna have to. I'll be doing a lot of my research and time is gonna be just like researching other great DMs and watching them and figuring out like, well, how do they run, battles and stories for higher level adventures? Because I want it to continue to be very, very scary and very dreadful. Um, but I don't have a lot of experience in how to do that necessarily. So, especially with monsters that I'm homebrewing, creating on my own. So I have some research and learning to do there, and sometimes it's gonna work and sometimes it won't, but that's okay. It's just story. And I'm excited to kind of, yeah, see what that is. I'm nervous though. I'm definitely gonna have to do some research because they are strong. They are really, really strong. Um, yeah, so I'm just gonna have to hit them harder and surprise them more often and uh sort of figure out how this world can be even more deadly,
Even more dread.
even more dread.
So please get into the comments what GMs and high level
Yes,
adventuring
if you have
should Deborah
tips.
research. Let us know.
The big thing
Uh,
I already know, but I keep forgetting to do because I like one-off bad guys, is they need minions. No one-off
mm,
bad guy does
mm,
well against a party. So they just
mm.
have minions.
They're
Um,
leaders. They got to delegate.
they gotta delegate. So that's I have previously learned that lesson, but I have not yet really jumped on it because I'm so attracted to like the one really scary,
Yeah.
villain. So yeah, so that's something I'm gonna try to experiment with and do better on going forward, making sure that all of my main bads have a good cadre
All
around.
right. Well, sorry, players. I didn't mean to.
Yes, everyone in the comments, please go give me tips on how to better kill the party. I would really appreciate it. Don't tell
Well,
them.
don't
If they're in the chat, don't listen.
you can't hear anything. You can't hear anything. But based on the capabilities of some of our
Yes.
heroes and a couple dropped hints here and there, they they aren't quite as high level as I might have expected now that they're bouncing around sort of planes.
Yes, sort of, yes.
often in a Dungeons and Dragons story, they'll be pretty chonky by the time they go planeshopping, but are they maybe a little under leveled for that, a little underprepared? Is it just because you enjoy telling stories at this power level, or does it bespeak the length of runway we have, sort of
Ooh,
where one might infer them to be? There was maybe a
ooh.
little slip about their level a couple episodes ago. If you want to
Oh,
go digging, chat.
yeah, go dig. Oh, I don't know if I'm that intentional about it. Honestly, I'm just telling stories I like. Again, there is classic D&D, which, has its own rules and sets of sort of ideas of how you level up and when things happen, I guess. They are not currently plane jumping. They are being invited into
Right. They
plane.
don't usually, you need the spell that unlocks that, you get
Yes.
to it at a certain sort of level, but we have mirror hacks.
Yes, we have
sorts of
mirrors and we
things.
have rulers, right? So like Ivy opened that portal,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
to this
Yeah, that
world.
wasn't
The
them.
players did. The players aren't going anywhere
Mm-mm.
without Ivy at this point. They're stuck in Tiver
Not
until
tonight.
she decides they can go. Um or something else happens. But I think I didn't even really think about it. Maybe because I haven't run very many high level adventures, but like this isn't necessarily plane jumping in the same context as it would be in a more, traditional D&D setting, maybe. This is the reality of this world. I mean, you might as well say, I mean, they plane jumped from the very first episode. This is a different world, or well, they're the first couple episodes as soon as they entered that room earlier than I thought they would. So yeah,
I
so
see a common theme of unexpected
yes.
rushing in.
So yeah, I think they're capable.
That's good.
I'm also going to, I'm going to level up my game a little bit by doing some of my own research about how to keep them on their toes. And yeah, these are just worlds, they're just visiting these other spaces. And right now Tiver is kind of a dormant world because of what's happened. And so my other tease for this particular on the Éarte to share is that, if they happen to wake Tiver up a little bit, we might see something else. So, we'll see where they're headed with all of that. But they're seeing it in a very specific state right now.
That's true. And we did have a question from Cassius about whether you're interested in keeping the players in Tiver for a while, letting them experience it in this dormant state.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if they play their cards right in the awakened state, do you think they're going to be burning through these realms fast, or do you think there's a lot to keep them there?
I don't think they're not going to be in Tiver as long as they were in the Vale, let's say. That was really specifically like the first section of this adventure was about that. I'm definitely doing leveling on a milestone system. So as they achieve certain things, they get to level up. I've just always preferred doing it that way. And they won't be in Tiver for a year of our time.
Right.
That's for sure. Right now we've been there for about a month and maybe a little less. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to give that away too much because also I don't know. I would have said we would move through the Vale faster than we did, but they were having a blast going through it at their speed, and it allowed me to add a lot of interesting new stuff and cut and move some other things around. So yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to kind of leave it up to the players. I don't know if they should be moving faster, if I should be leveling them faster. I don't know. It feels good to
We're
me.
all having a good time, so I think you're doing everything you should be doing.
I mean, people play these games for like 20 years without stopping. I mean, that's not a spoiler. I don't anticipate we'll be playing Children of Éarte for 20 years, but we could.
You heard it here first.
But yeah, I mean, if we spent the first, almost, we spent the first year plus in the Vale, we could spend the next year plus going through these other worlds. They're, these other rulers' worlds. Yeah, I'll be curious. I'm curious to find out. We'll see how long they stay.
I guess y'all are just going to have to stick around and watch and find out. And we're getting close to the wrap up, so I'll just ask you my final question, because this whole thing started in between our last interviews, but a recent combat saw the catapulting of one doll in Robin's Grand Doll Army. So my final question to you tonight is, if you had a doll army, what would you do with them, and what kind of dolls would fill their ranks?
Okay, so the paper dolls might be my favorite from that whole thing. I just think they're so terrifying and so wonderful, and I love that they like I got a hit on a barbarian with my paper dolls.
Yeah, you did.
I was like, yeah, my high con who survived a werewolf fight.
This is a paper doll who got
some paper doll cuts. So I don't know. I was very excited about the doll fight. I love that Robin has them because it means they can come back. I really like the paper dolls. I think they're unexpected. No one expects a paper doll army. What would I use them for? I mean, they'd be good. They'd be great for like scouting. Right? Using them in water might be bad. I don't imagine they hold up well in water.
Poor pool noodles.
Yeah. So that would be, but yeah, I feel like scouting, and then like, yeah, if you had minions that you had to fight off, like, again, don't listen, players, but you could unleash, an army of paper dolls onto one of them, and then unleash the marionettes on another, and then unleash, you could just do, kind of send them to take care of some of the peripheral things, because they're good swarms, right? Essentially, they're swarms, doll swarms. Add it to your monster manual. Swarms of dolls.
Put it in the manual. Swarms of dolls. Also, don't let it go unnoticed, gentle chat, that Deborah has positioned herself as a big bad with minions in a doll army.
Yes, so my doll army of minions, my minion doll army. Yeah, I mean, dolls are inherently terrifying and wonderful at the same time. So I think they make perfect Dungeons and Dragons monsters.
Right. Dungeons and Dragons, definitely.
I don't actually have an army of dolls.
No, of course not. No army of paper dolls right behind you, just off camera. No. But as much as I would love to keep General Deborah around indefinitely, chat, I'm pretty sure she's an actual monster hunter in real life. So for all our protection, I gotta let her get back to that. Thank you so much for joining us, Deborah.
This is always a blast. Thank you. Oh, I guess on the socials. I think it's just my name. That's how involved I am about my own stuff. Yes, I believe it's my name, Deborah Ann Woll. I should be findable. Every so often I post about things that I'm doing or people that I think are awesome, things that they're doing. So yeah, it's mostly a really cool informational spot to find out about cool stuff that you can watch and enjoy.
Which means that the most reliable place to find Deborah is right here next week for Children of Éarte. Same doll army time, same doll army channel. Thanks so much, everyone. And until next time, we're going off the Éarte.